Hi there, thanks for joining us. So today's webinar is going to be looking specifically at journals and academic journals and journal articles, and why they are so important and how they are different from monographs, edited volumes and a range of reference works. Remember what I said at the first time about stating the obvious? This may be completely stuff that you know already, and if that's the case, that's wonderful. But I think it's important that we remind ourselves about the role that journals and journal articles play in academic life, whether you are an undergraduate, a postgraduate student or young faculty. Sometimes the obvious needs to be stated. So looking forward to our time together. Last time when we were together, we talked a little about the importance of libraries, the importance of reading. We are going to be talking a bit more about the really great things that the internet has done, but I'm taking the position in this webinar series that there is a process of formation where when you enter a postgraduate chapter, whether it be for a master's or a PhD or even an honours project, there is a process of formation where you learn a set of skills, where you are formed in a set of skills, where you are trained, you acquire new abilities in interacting with information through the written word. Now we'll talk about ways that we can compensate through all sorts of really fun, interesting technological advances, but reading makes you smart. The difference between an acceptable scholar and a really good scholar is often people who read and people who do not, or people who read as much as they should and people who are trying to get away with just as little as they can. So we are going to be talking about books in the next webinar, but let's just talk a little about journals. Remember that some of the things that I'm going to say is an exercise in stating the obvious. Journals are important in academic life for a number of reasons. Now, if you are listening to this and you are a member of the Faculty of Liberal Arts, your area may be cultural studies, it may be European studies, it may be geography, it may be history, it may be linguistics. And no matter what area you are involved in, there are journals which will deal with your area of particular interest, passion and specialisation. It is difficult to find a book that deals exactly with your area, but journals are a bewildering range of academic journals exist to further the area that you are involved in. And so the first reason why journals are important, we must read, as academics we must read, and we should be emphasising reading journals first, and the first reason for that is that journals are specialised. If you were interested in a relatively specialised area, so if you're a Thai specialist, there are a number of journals that you could regularly read, and one of them is the Journal of the Siam Society, and by doing so you'll read the latest thing that's Thai studies specialists have written. Journals are specialised. The other thing about journals, and I'll be comparing journals with books in the next series, but then we'll be talking a bit about the internet and some of the problems, some of the ways that you shouldn't be using the internet. The other thing about journals is that journals are certified. In other words, we can be more confident of the academic quality of the information in a journal compared to a Facebook page, a blog, or even just a website. The other thing, and that is, it is precisely the reason that journals go through this process called peer review, where submissions are received by editors and editors send them to specialists to see whether they are of acceptable quality. These are some of the reasons why journals are important. When you begin to read, and I'm very aware that some of you, for some of the people listening to this webinar, there's an enormous psychological barrier to get over to begin to be reading English journals, and for some of you, for many of you indeed, English may not be your native tongue. And so what I would like to say is journals are also important for another reason, that we should begin with journals because journals often are a condensed summary of things that are argued in more detail in a book. But when we are starting off, we should start by reading articles first and not reading these thick books. I will talk about the importance of books next time. Let's develop this idea. Not only should we begin to read journals before books, but it is a basic research skill for you to be looking for the latest journals on any particular topic. We will be talking about the ways that we can use library databases and can be searching the internet, and a very, very simple technique, which is so obvious it doesn't need to be stated, but stating the obvious is important, is that when we are doing searches on specific topics, we should get into the habit of searching for a topic and then putting 2016 and then downloading what we've found, and then 2015, 2014, and that is the fastest way to get an idea of the state of knowledge about a particular issue. There are other reasons. There are a number of reasons why we should start with a new and then work back. And the most important is that it is often the case that if we start with older material, we are going to find that what we are interacting with is outdated. And it's outdated often in two ways. The first way is that the data being collected is data that is decades old. And as we know, the world is changing very fast. We should start with the new information. That does not say that old data is not important, but it does depend on your objectives. The other thing which is significant, and we will be talking quite a bit about this idea of theory. Data is like a camera sensor, and theory is like a camera lens. I change the lens, and the information that gets into the sensor changes. Many of us spent a lot of time reading books that were written when certain theories were in vogue, and so the other reason to start with new is that we can avoid getting sucked into old theories that have been delegitimized. Now, there are exceptions to this rule, and these include the importance of reading classic articles which produce the benchmark for our area of specialization. The other reason that we should start with the new and work back is this is where we get things that are absolutely hot off the press, cutting edge researches by people who are key to their field, and this is something that we'll be talking about a lot. This is the best way to start working on your bibliography. You get the most recent article from the most authoritative journal, and you go through and you copy all the references from that article, and then you go back and you work your way back, what I would refer to as following the paper trail, but doing so backwards, starting with the most recent. So just to summarize, journals are important. Journals are important for a number of reasons. This is not to say that books are not important, and we'll be talking about books later on, but journals are important because journals are places where people who have got specific interests can go and get their interests satisfied. This is the place where high quality, peer-reviewed articles that have been certified come out on a regular basis, and this is the best place for people with an interest in a specific subdiscipline. It may be religious anthropology, it may be linguistic anthropology, it may be discourse analysis, it may be Asian history, it may be Thai studies. Regardless of what your interests are, it is almost always the case that there will be a journal that you can regularly read to follow the state of knowledge in that particular thing, that particular area. We will be talking about the importance of books, but it is a truism that when we are beginning to cover the literature, it is wisest to begin to read articles. We should start with the most recent articles. We should be. It's important to be reading classic studies, but please avoid starting your paper trail decades in the past where the data is different and theoretically things happen very differently. Start with journal articles that are hot off the press. This is the best way for you to begin to follow the paper trail and to get that bibliography done. Now, this is not to say that books are not important, but books, in my opinion, form a very different function. Well, I hope that that's kind of whet your appetite for getting into the journals. We'll be talking a bit more about where you can find the journals, both in the physical library as well as the virtual library. But I really do hope that you're beginning to get your appetite whet about where to find the places that are really scratching where you're itching. Journals are just so cool. So tomorrow we're going to be talking a bit about these things called books and why they're important. Thanks for listening. Catch ya.